See if I get something today. That would be nice. So, hello. It was Aaliyah, yes?
Aaliyah.
Nice to meet you, Aaliyah. Today, I'm going to talk about where should I publish my research. And when I was showing you earlier the links here, the first one actually is a link to like a page that includes a lot of this content, but in a different breakdown. Because teaching it, I want to have a little more logic to how I'm bringing it forward. And then the grad studies page is where the links are for our videos. So when we have a workshop, and it'll give you the schedule of all the workshops, and it also will include a video if something is in a video. And then, of course, the ScholarCom page includes other kinds of scholarly communication type topics. So please ask questions as we go. We're such a small group that you just ask me as we go if you have a question. Let's get this down to the bottom. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through this and use this as, this is going to be the last thing I'm going to ask you today, okay? So I'm going to ask you that you submit your article when you are confident that your chosen journal will have a suitable profile among your peers to enhance your reputation and gain citations. Publishing in the journal is appropriate for your research and will raise your professional profile and help you progress in your career. Again, your paper will be indexed or archived to be easily discoverable. And finally, you can expect a professional publishing experience where your work is reviewed and edited. So these are the items that you're looking to fulfill when you select a journal. And so we're going to talk about a couple of ways to figure that out, many ways. So the agenda for today, I'm going to use two scenarios that have come up to me so many times that I thought, let's just walk through what a person would do if they run into these two scenarios. And what we're going to explore along the way is how to determine the relevance and quality of the resources you're interested in, the basic indicators of legitimacy, because there's a lot of kind of scams going on out there, including predatory publishers. We'll talk about some additional quality criteria, some additional negative signals, and finally, just a brief overview of the journal ranking and impact as another way to identify whether something is going to be appropriate for you.
Oh, what is a predatory publisher?
Well, if you think about predatory, it's usually a publisher that, I don't want to say that they have unscrupulous motives, but they are not a high quality publisher usually. They make you think that they're a high quality publisher, and they will try to get you, sometimes they'll try to lure you in to publish with them. They don't always have the proper quality of review. So there are all these pieces of the puzzle that are sometimes missing. And so as we walk through today, I'm going to use these scenarios to show you how to identify journals and good things about journals, but more also to see if you don't find these things and to be cognizant of the situation where a journal might be questionable, and whether it's, some journals are a higher quality than others, and some have more money and they can afford to do certain things that others can't, but you have to take all those things into account. And there are lots of third world publishers that fit into the predatory area, that they actually will use addresses in the US, but really it's only like, it's a front for an address and a phone number that's somewhere else. The materials, it's not a real office even, it's just a fake. So they receive your email and they'll receive all your stuff, but they're not really here, and or somewhere else that may be a more reputable place. So it's a very interesting thing, and I'll actually show you some of the letters and things that they might send. So you'll see what I mean. So with the two scenarios we're going to play with today is, number one, I'm looking for an appropriate journal for my research. How do I find one? You don't have one in mind yet. So I'm going to show you how you would approach that. And the second one is, I have the name of a journal and I need to know more about it. Those are the two things that people often come to me with, and so we'll walk through both of those. So the checklist that I share, that you picked up, did you pick up the checklist in the front over there? One side of it starts with, I'm looking for a journal and I don't know the name, you know, it's not the name. One side is with the name and the other one you don't know the name. Okay, so how to determine relevance. So I would recommend, first you start with your own research. You want to look at the research that you're doing and try to find something that includes your area, obviously. When you start looking up information about journals, they should talk about, on the scope page, they should talk about the scope of the journal, and it should include the area that you're in. Mm-hmm. If not, then you're going to pass that one by. You have to find something that fits the profile of your own research. So that's number one. When available, you can consult journal and publishing guides for your discipline. And there's actually on our page, let me take you to our page. Let me do this again. Oops. Yeah. Oh, whoops. So this is the page I was showing you before. So on this page, I have guides and directories. Depending on your subject area, we may own a guide or a directory that fits your area. And so if there is a guide or directory, and honestly, if you're doing this searching and you're wondering, is there something that will help me? Don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I mean, if you're not finding something, I'll be happy to, give you a hand with that. But this guide has some, and what they'll usually do is provide a little background on the journal, give you a little bit more to go on than just a name. Now, I would have you search for articles in relevant databases that are in your field, and I would say for this stage, definitely stay away from Google Scholar. That's not really the place you want to be because it's not focused enough. Whatever your field is, we have databases that specifically look at that field, and I would recommend going into that. There's probably more than one database you can use, and you would go in there and search for your topic and see where are articles being published. Also, think of the research you have done already. You have a bibliography of resources probably that you're already compiling, and their bibliographies indicate journals. So these are some of the suggestions that you can get that give you an idea of journals that include information in the field, in your field, and that have talked about your topic. So that's one of the ways to figure that out. And as I said before, if you're not sure which database to go to, you can come to me, or you can go to the liaison in your area. And on the library homepage under Find, there's a link for subject librarians, and you can identify who your liaison is. So they would be happy to give you a little help with that. So don't hesitate to ask. Now, the place that a lot of people don't go that is really the most probably helpful is to consult with colleagues and mentors, research partners, and peers. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but a lot of people do not take that route because they don't want to sound like they don't know what they're doing. Even faculty often do not consult with other faculty because they don't want to seem like they don't know. And I know that's happened because I've had them come to me, so it's not unusual. But some might talk to colleagues about it, but lots don't. And they can be so much help. And sometimes they're not as good help. Sometimes they're good help, sometimes they're not. I have had situations where students got a review from someone about a journal because it was so easy to publish there. And then when they came to me and they were trying to get funding, at one point I was helping out with that, I had to share with them that it was a predatory journal and we wouldn't support funding for a predatory journal. And they were like, what do you mean? And I had to share with them that it was not a reputable publisher. They publish stuff, but you have to make that decision. Do I want that publication to be associated with my work? So that's, those are the weighing you do when you're trying to identify a publisher. Of course, you can consider contacting journal editors, and you want to, before you do that, you would definitely want to check the journal webpage, because they will usually tell you if they will accept article inquiries, because very often they won't. But if they will accept one, remember that the email or letter should be short and to the point. It should have a good subject line, because it needs to capture their attention. And you just want to do a few sentences about your topic and its significance in the field. Provide your contact information, and make sure you just keep the body short and compelling. You don't want to go into a lot of detail here. So it really depends. Some journals will accept queries, others will not. And again, the web page usually will tell you that. So let's go to the next. Yes.
If they do accept queries, would it be best to send one, even if you're looking to publish with them or not?
I would only do it if I was thinking of publishing with them, because you don't want to get, not that people share, oh, these people keep writing me letters. I'm sure they don't know who, different people, but I would only do it if I was serious.
So if you're gonna submit to them no matter what, you can still write one?
If you want to submit to them no matter what, I would say, well, wouldn't you rather find out if they're accepting something on your, if they'll accept a query and you have a topic in mind, I think it wouldn't hurt to say, I'm working on this, and take the pointers from that slide, and then you'll get a feeling for whether they are accepting some. There are times when you'll see a journal will have an issue where they will do like a comprehensive look at a topic, and they may not be so quick to want something so quickly afterwards. You just don't know. And so if they're accepting queries, you might even say, I saw that wonderful issue on blah, 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 and I've been working on this. I'd really like to submit it. Are you accepting something in this area now? I mean, that's a totally relevant way to approach it. You know what I mean? So, and if you're not sure what they've published recently, there's so many ways for us. You can go into the, our collections if we have it. You can look at the contents pages of journals, even if you can't look at them if it's a journal we don't get. But getting a feeling for what they do in advance is a good idea. So let's talk about the second side of the equation, and that is, I know the name of a journal, and where do I go? So what I usually do is I start people out with a database called Ulrich's Web. Have you ever used that? Okay, so let me go over there. And to get to Ulrich's Web, we go to the A to Z list. And then I can go to U, and it's down this page. And on this page, this is where you write the name of the journal that you're interested in. So is there a journal that you've used recently? I could use that as an example, or?
Try Journal of Neuroscience. I haven't published yet.
That's okay. That's all right. I'll just give you an example. So here's this Journal of Neuroscience. Sometimes you see more than one of these, and it's the same. As you can see, it's the same group that has published it, but there are different things about it. This is telling you right here that it's refereed, which means it's peer reviewed. And then this is probably the E version of it. This little star means that there's a review of it. And so different ones may have different things. I'm going to go to the last one, which is probably the most recent. You can see it's online. If you look down here, it's telling you online. This was the print one. So I'm going to click on it. And what's nice about this if you were considering this journal, for example. When you go to this page, it tells you the website. It gives, tells you that it's academic, which is important to you. It's refereed. You must have that if you're doing research. And then down here, it gives you some other things. So number one, just being in Ulrichs is a big point. Okay, that's an important element. And on the side here, it has online availability and abstract and indexing. So I always check those. Is it abstracted and indexed in a lot of places? And you can see here, it is indexed in a lot of places. At least it has to be indexed somewhere, because do you know why the indexing is so important? Because that's how people find it. So if you publish in that journal, all of these publications will have that are relevant to your topic will include your article if it gets published by them. So you want it to be discoverable. That's one of the important things. I also use the online availability link because sometimes they've been moving the holdings in both of them. So we can see there are a lot of places where it's available online, and that's a pro. That's all good. And as I said, sometimes they'll include, and of course, if you go to abstract and indexing, you're also sometimes wondering, do we have it? Is it in something we have? And I can see that we do have access to it through some of the things we already subscribe to. So, so this is a pro. Now, I had a journal that someone was looking for. So I'm going to use it as my example here. And I want to show you International Journal of Nursing and Health Care Research. So I'm looking for that journal. And I go through my list here. And I see International Journal of Nursing and Healthcare. I see similar things, but I don't see that. When that happens, I'm thinking, this is not a good sign. The minute I can't find it in here, it's a question mark. So like you have a checklist there, so that would be like a question mark. I couldn't find it in Ulrichs. So your goal is to see, can I find it anywhere? And that's why some of the different questions I would have somebody ask after that. So we'll keep pursuing this journal, but it got a 0 in Ulrichs, and to me that's an issue. So then journal is included in subject-specific databases, and there are articles related to your topic. So like before, I was suggesting just to find journals by going into databases. Here, you know the name of the journal. You'd probably take that name and go into your databases and make sure that you find articles. Also, not just articles, but maybe articles including your topic. So you're trying to vet this journal and make sure they really are covering your area. So it's a different approach than before. Now we're trying to see, do they really do it? So that's important. And of course, Ulrichs, if you were looking really closely, you'd see what databases we have. But here, again, if you're working, if you usually know the databases that have your articles or work with the liaison or me, we'll get you to the right place to check that out. Now, the scope of the journal should be well defined and clearly stated on their website. And so when you go to the website, you want to be able to see that. And some journals, let's see if the last one is listed here. Okay, so when I go to this journal and I'm on the website, they will usually give you some information about the journal right off the bat. And if you're going for authors, it goes into the details here. But if I say about, that's what I would look under. So I would say overview and see, are they talking about the mission? Are they talking about their scope? See the aim and the scope. They're talking about what they do. You can look at the criteria, the values. So they're providing a lot of information about what they are and what their goals are. And they're even talking about other things that I'm worrying about. So this is a good example of a website that's very clear about what they do. Sometimes I've done some different ones over the years, and sometimes they're like, it looks like they do everything, and you're wondering, wait, everything? You know, that's not a very focused periodical, so be careful about that. So once you've taken care of this much, at this point you're wondering, is my manuscript appropriate for the journal that I've identified? And then if the answer is yes, then you continue to evaluate for quality. And so then we'll move on to the next part. So when you're evaluating for quality, again, you should be talking to colleagues, mentors, peers, and see if they are familiar with the journal. And another thing to use, which is really interesting, are some of these associations. They include information on the kind of the standards of publishing. So when I have a journal in mind, I will go to COPE. I will look that up, look the journal up on COPE. I'll go to a WASPA. I'll try whatever. All of these are ones that I'll take a quick run into all of them and see if I find the journal. If you don't see it, it's also now you're thinking, oh, okay, so they're not affiliated with any of these, which are about standards in publishing. So again, you're kind of making little notes to self, not sure, don't see it in any of these. And of course, on the journal website, you'll see the publisher name. It should be clearly displayed. It isn't always, so you have to be careful about that. And you want to make sure that there's complete contact information. That's the one where I was saying to you, there are sometimes journals that have fake addresses. And a lot of people I know recently, I've heard examples of where they'll take the address and look it up on Google Maps. And they find like a storefront, and it's like, you know, something else. It's not what it is. So that starts to make you wonder, who am I dealing with here? And of course, the journal talks about the type of peer review it uses. And when we were on the site for this journal, I noticed as we were coming down that it was talking about fair and constructive peer review, and they were discussing that. And you could get, when you go to the author section, they should include additional information on the peer review they use. So those are some great examples of quality. Now, another one, are the editors or editorial board recognized experts in the field? Do they list the journal on their websites? There are lots of examples of publications that include the names of their experts who have not agreed to be on their editorial board. And there are times when people find out that they're listed and they try to get off. They try to get them to get their name off the list, and sometimes I don't think that they're successful. So you could go to an editor's page and see if they include that journal on their CV or whatever it could be a web page that they put out. So, you know, at this point, as you're starting to look these things if you're getting positives, then that's all piling up, that's good. If you're getting nowhere, then you begin to see, I have got to think twice about this journal. But I myself have done research on that and had negative results. Could not find any of the American public editors at their universities, not listed at all as involved with that journal. So it's not an unusual thing these days. Another thing you want to make sure of is, does the website list any fees that you would be charged for publishing the article? Traditionally, there have been publishing fees for certain, when you publish, there are certain in the print world, but in the online world, we see it for open access journals. And you want to see that before you publish, not after you submit an article. You want to know that in advance. So most journals will include something that will talk about open access and what the fees would be if you decide you want to publish with them. Or there are also traditional journals that now offer, we call it hybrid. They offer the opportunity to publish in open access for a fee. So that's also an option in many situations. So, and open access means it's published right away and there isn't like a time lag, because a lot of journals, they're not freely available because they're, you know, they're a business commodity. And so you cannot get it for free. If you go to this university, you'll have access to journals, but regular people who don't have an FIU ID, for example, can't get into those journals. So it's very, you know, it's nice that the rest of the world can get and look at your article. If it's open access, it's really giving you more opportunity to have impact out there in the world. Some basic indicators of legitimacy. Do you or your colleagues know the journal? Can you easily identify and contact the publisher? Some of these things I've talked about, the dark ones, I guess, is what I'm going to focus on here, because you can see they're lighter. Does the journal have an international standard serial number? And normally, this is a really important thing, because right off the bat, that says that they're already signed up somewhere important, and every journal has one, you know, they have their own ISSN number. And if you want to check, there is a portal to verify now ISSN numbers. So because a lot of the journals that are scamming people have created their own numbers, and so they're very smart. Some things are very smart. I'll show you in a minute. You'll see how they're not so smart sometimes. And these other ones we've talked about, so I'm not going to go through those again. I just want to make sure that the ones that we haven't talked about that you talk about. So DOI numbers, you probably see lots of journal articles now have DOI numbers. Digital object identifiers, that's another important thing to have. Again, I wouldn't assume that something is a great journal just because it has that, because the predatory ones are getting, you know, a little more savvy and making sure that they get DOIs. And of course, for open access journals, you usually want to see that they indicate what their licensing is for use and reuse. So usually a Creative Commons, some type of Creative Commons license is attached to your article. Whether you know, for distribution or reuse or commercial reuse, you make those decisions, and usually they will have some sort of choices for you to make between what type of Creative Commons license you want to apply. Still has copyright, but Creative Commons is about use and reuse. So some negative indicators. Journals difficult to locate. The publisher about information is either absent on the website or very sketchy. A single editor is listed, and then the editorial board info isn't there. The publisher uses direct marketing. I'm going to show you an example of that on our next slide. And a lot of grad students get these. Direct soliciting or other obtrusive advertising. And of course, they may not have clear instructions for authors either. But this next slide is from something that my dean got, and it's from this journal. It's an open access policy, it says. And as you read it, let me throw this up to the top so you can read this thing down here. I love how it says, on behalf of the editorial board of the journal, it is glorified for us to invite you to join us as one of the editorial board. And it's not to make, you know, laugh at someone who doesn't speak English very well, but if they're putting it out there to an audience, an educated audience, they really should have someone looking very closely. What's really funny about this particular letter is, first, they're telling you that they saw a valuable article that she wrote in a journal that's quite reputable, and the topic impressed them a lot. And so they're asking about submitting manuscripts to them. Then as they go further down the letter, then they're asking her to be a member of their editorial board. And, you know, so you can see that they're fishing for something. And what I also noticed, this isn't the only situation, I noticed that when when students write their dissertations and they have them published in our ETD, which is an electronic open access venue, very often they will get a letter from a publisher offering to publish their article, their book, their thesis as a book. And I mean, it's already available to everybody, but they're trying to make it a print book, and they're offering you a certain amount of money after you sell a certain amount of, it's really a ridiculous scam. And in the process, if you do that, you give away your copyright, which is something you do not want to do lightly. So I often say to students, don't get taken by that. You have to think about this long and hard because you're the one, when you have copyright, who makes decisions about the use and reuse of your work. And giving away copyright means the publisher now has that option, not you. So you have to think through that. But it's very interesting how they write these letters that really, and they'll always talk about the wonderful work you've already done. And so they're buttering you up. And not to give anything away, but I have spoken to very unhappy people, including faculty, who have mistakenly done that and actually submitted to some of these publishers who've, sort of really given them a song and a dance, and it turned out to be a disreputable publisher, and they could not get out of it. It's very hard to do that. So you got to think about that. So some more negative indicators. Peer review and copyright info is absent or unclear. The journal scope statement is sometimes absent or extremely vague. No info is provided about the publisher, or the information provided does not clearly indicate a relationship to a mission, excuse me, to disseminate research. You'll see repeat authors in the same issue, which is fairly rare in high quality journals. And the publisher might have a negative reputation. There's some lists, they're called tables. They have a database where they create these white lists and black lists. It is a subscription service, but I have gotten my hands on some files that include what's on some of their lists. So if you ever needed to check if something is on a white list or a black list, I may have one of those. I don't distribute them because it's really not mine to distribute, but you can always come and ask, if you're wondering what tables, where they put it, because this is important and it's helpful to avoid wasting your time. All of our times are precious. So before I do this, I want to go in here. When we were looking before, we were looking for the Journal of Neuroscience. I want to look for another journal. I'm going to look for the one that we were playing with before. There it is. Oh, I thought it was funny when I tested this out earlier that someone else had already, yeah, had already seen something with predatory. So I found the journal. It's Gavin Publishers. And, I'd known already there were some issues with it, but I think that this is a great example of how they've done a pretty good job of making it look kind of slick, and one of the things that's a big issue with some of the predators, I'm not sure that Gavin is really bad about this, but there are predatory conferences now where they have a whole conference set up and people sign up, they pay, they go, and they're in a room, they meet people in a room who also had paid to go, but it wasn't a real conference. So you have to be so careful, not just with journal publishing. Now, they do have an ISSN, which I thought, oh, how interesting. They've really outdone themselves. And they do tell you what their journal is about. These are important things. So I was noticing, they're telling you about DOIs, and I had done some looking, so I know that this is considered questionable publisher. But they have the quick links for authors and all of the different, these are all the different topics in this particular journal that they cover, which, is pretty broad, but the journal title is not focused, so it makes sense that they would look at a lot of these. That they have the section for authors, for submit. Now in this section, I thought it was interesting, it's just like the details of what to do, but they're not really mentioning much else. Let's see, under submit manuscript, just very plain. Let's see, open access, policy, why open access? And they do open access stuff, so I'm thinking, is there anything here about money? I didn't see anything about the cost of anything. And on the page where you submit, it doesn't have anything. So these are some of the things that make you wonder. I could see somebody get taken in by them because it looks like a publisher, but we didn't find it in Ulrich's at all. And I didn't go into some databases yet. I really didn't play around with it, but I went into Google Scholar and I found about 90 articles in Google Scholar from them, but a lot of them had nobody citing them, so it's hard to say. Those are the kind of things you're looking for, and you just have to be careful about it. So in terms of journal ranking and impact, this gets into more complex, I would say metrics about how a journal stands in the world of publishing. So mostly we see this in the sciences and the social sciences. And for the most part, it represents what impact that journal has on the field and the quality of the journal. Very often it's correlated with the difficulty of being published in a journal and also the prestige associated with it. So that's why in certain fields, impact factor is highly prized, but it isn't, these days there's a lot of questions about how, relevant it is in this day and age, that it may not be as clear as to what impact means anymore, because so much social media and other ways that people are sharing and making impact with their research. But let me tell you, it still holds sway in a lot of subject areas. So if you're in a neuroscience area, it's probably still important. And you can go, we have journal citation reports in our A to Z list. So you can go in there and look up a journal and see where it ranks. These other ones, eigenfactor and Cimagno, when you look at these, sometimes they are ranked by like looking at a 5-year period, and other times, and they often will be looking at the whole journal. At other times, some of these are looking at an issue. Hello. We're almost done, so I don't know if you're welcome to join us. And so they look in a different way at the journal. They may look at a particular article and how well a particular article is done. So depending on which ones you choose. Now, if you wanted a quick look at Google Scholar metrics, have you ever looked at those? Yeah, in Google Scholar. It's also an interesting way to take a look at the top journals, if you're just curious and you're not in a database like citation, journal citations. Let's see.
There was a link at that metric. Go back.
Oh, this one. Yeah, if we use the hamburger, it's there too. Okay, so when you go to metrics, you can see the journals on their own, which ones, all the journals of the world, what's in what list, how they rank. But you can also go to the categories. This is the part that's kind of fun, because you just go to categories. What's your subject area?
Engineering.
So you'd go here, and then they have the subcategory. Well, so first they do they'll do first the engineering list, and then the subcategories. What's your subcategory?
Biomedical, neuroscience, whatever you find.
Here's biomedical. Do we see neuroscience down here? Oh, I don't see it. So let's go here. I don't know if you saw it. You can look more closely. So did I choose? Did it let me choose it? Yeah, there it is. So then it gives from the top one. See, it's giving you, this is the 5-year. And then down, so this is the top 20 that it's listing for impact. It's not, it's not that you're going to never publish in the top ones, but it's something to strive for. And it gives you some good names that you can look at, that may be a little less up there on, at the beginning, you're not usually aiming for the stars. Occasionally you work with a professor that might be aiming for the stars, and you can do that with them. But there's so many journals out there, and this is just an example of taking a look at, like if you have the name of a journal, that's a handy way to go look and see where they are in the continuum. And that's why some of the other things I recommended to you today is very important, is talking to mentors and other people who've been publishing, get their feedback. So after all of that, I would ask you the questions that I had brought up at the beginning. Submit your manuscript to a chosen journal if you answer yes to most or all of the questions below. Are you confident that your chosen journal will have a suitable profile among your peers to enhance your reputation and chance of gaining citations? Is publishing in this journal appropriate for your research, and will it raise your professional profile and help you progress in your career? Will your paper be indexed and archived and be easily discoverable? And that obviously, as I was showing you earlier, would be in a database that includes the journal you're publishing in. And can you expect a professional publishing experience where your work is going to be reviewed and edited? You cannot underplay that part of the publishing process, because the reviewers usually give you such important feedback about what you can do to improve your piece that you've already created. They may find something that significantly needs to be added before they would publish. So that part of the process is very important. And if you're not going to a publisher that's providing that kind of feedback, on one hand, it's like, oh, they're going to take my article, but you want feedback. And those things are very helpful in terms of putting out the best product in the end. So,
how many times can you submit the same paper to a journal? Same paper meaning after they give you your feedback, you make them.
Well, it really depends on the publisher. And you have to work with them as to, if they think that it only needs a small amount, but it really depends on the publisher. Some will require more. They'll allow more updates from you, because remember, first you go through peer review and all of the suggestions pertaining to that from all the peer reviewers. And then the publishers themselves may have additional things that are more maybe grammatical or whatever. So, it depends. I would ask some of your professors about that, because they've been through the process more. I've only been through it a few times, and I haven't had a lot of redos to do. But you may, you don't know what your situation will be. So I would ask them. They'll give you a realistic idea. And really, I know this may sound like common sense, but before you ever send it out, have somebody you really respect read it. They're going to give you some feedback. I mean, obviously you're not asking them to be the peer reviewer and give you details, but you want to get a feeling, am I on the right track? Is this ready to send? Because you'd rather send it a little more polished if you can, So I would get feedback, definitely.